What the heck happened in 1971? It's the year that the whole world changed. Now, in economics and on this channel, we reference the year 1971 all the time because it was this one year that changed everything in the world that we live in today. And understanding this is the key to getting back to a real economy. Now, since that year, it's gotten harder and harder to live. It's gotten harder to afford the dream, while the world has shifted and morphed into a society that we barely recognize. So in this video, I want to show you what happened in 1971 that changed everything. I want to show you a series of detailed charts and graphs that are going to show you exactly how that change has affected your job, your pay, your expenses, your education, your family life, your health, society, and so much more. Now, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words, and once you see these charts, you're going to understand this issue better than almost every economist in the world, and you're going to feel confident that you know exactly what needs to be done. So let's go. All right, now real quick before we dig in, if you're new to the channel, my name is Mark Moss, and I make these videos because I want to change the way you think about money, because almost everything that you've learned is wrong. And I know it's hard to navigate these markets. It's scary to think about what happens if you get this wrong. And it's frustrating when you don't understand. I mean, these things affect your money, affect your life, affect your family. So that's why I take these complex subjects and make them easy to understand, make them actionable, so you can have more freedom and options for your life and your family. If you like those topics and want to help me, do me a favor, click on that like button so the algorithm sends it out to more people. Of course, hit that subscribe button, the bell notification if you're not already subscribed. All right, now we have a lot to go over today, a bunch of charts and graphs I'm excited to show you, so let's do that. All right, we're talking about money. Of course, we're on a finance channel, so why wouldn't we? And of course, we're gonna go back into a little bit of history. Now, I'm gonna show you a ton of charts. We're gonna move through this pretty quickly because I have so many charts and graphs to show you, because like I said, a picture's worth 1,000 words. But just to set the stage for a little bit, the first thing you have to understand is that in 1971 is the day that the world changed. It's because our money changed. And so in order to understand how our money changed, and more importantly, how changing the money changed the world, you have to understand a little bit. Now, I'm not gonna go super deep into this because I cover it so much on my channel. If you're new to the channel, you have to catch up quick, all right? So the first thing you have to understand is what is money. I'm not gonna go deep into that, but money is communication. Money helps its signal, helps what prices are, and ultimately it helps us to store our value, right? So we have our wealth. So let's say that I'm digging holes for pay. I'm spending my energy digging holes, and it takes me 6 hours of digging holes to make enough to live off of. Well, I could decide to work an extra 2 hours digging holes, and then I could store that energy, store that time in money to be used at a later date in time. So it's a store of my value, store of my energy, all right? And in order for it to have that attribute, I need to be confident that when I want to use it in the future, it's there. So for example, I wouldn't want to store it in bananas because within a couple of days, those bananas would be bad, right? I want to store my wealth, my value, my energy in something that's going to last a long time without losing value. The next thing is that it needs to be a medium of exchange. And so that means it's transportable. It's easy for me to carry around. It's divisible. I can break it down. If all I had was a cow to trade with you, you might not want a whole cow. Cow's not very divisible, so it needs to be divisible. It needs to be scarce, and this is a big one we're going to talk about as we get into this. And so you can't just have an unlimited supply. It has to be a scarce amount, has to be resistant to counterfeiting, because of course if people can counterfeit it, they can come and steal your wealth. You understand that? Of course, we'll talk about how the Fed is doing just that. And it needs to be saleable. And what does that mean? It has to be a liquid market. Enough people have to want that. If all you have is a cow, a lot of people may not want that cow. And so it needs to be saleable. A lot of people want it. And then ultimately the third one is a unit of account. And so it sets a standard. We can measure it. You can break it down into units, and each unit still retains that share of the value, and it's fungible. So like $1 is always worth $1. And 1 ounce of gold is always worth 1 ounce of gold, things like that. And so that's the attributes of money. And it's important to understand those things so you can understand a little bit of a bigger picture we're going to jump into. I'm going to show you a bunch of charts and graphs that are all courtesy of my friends over at WTF Happened 1971. I'm going to link to this. If you like these charts and graphs, I'm going to show you. There's a whole bunch more. I'll show you how to get to them. I'll link to them in the description. Now, gold has been money. Let's go through the history real quick. Gold has been money because it fits all those attributes that I said. It's divisible. I can have a gold bar, an ounce of gold, a gram of gold, etc. And then it's fungible, so a gram of gold equal a gram of gold. Portable, I can carry it with me, all those things. So it fits all those attributes, and that's why it's been money for 5,000 years. It's also scarce, right? the other thing that I didn't touch on is that it has to have a cost of true capital. So what does that mean? So in order to get gold out of the ground, I have to go buy land, and I have to spend my time looking for it, and I have to get heavy equipment and move in there and dig it out of the ground and process it and refine it and ship it and all those things. So there's a cost. There's a cost for me to get that capital out of the ground. There has to be that cost. If I can just push a button and create more money, it's not scarce, there's no cost, and that's why it distortions. All right, now, real quick through the history here, 5,000 years been money, and 1792, the US coinage act, so that became the gold standard of the United States. 1900 was formerly the Gold Standard Act. 1944 is the Bretton Woods Agreement. That's when the whole world agreed that the dollar would be the reserve currency of the world. The dollar would be pegged to gold. All the other currencies of the world would be pegged to the dollar, so thereby every currency of the world was pegged to gold. And then WTF happened, 1971, we severed the gold window. And that's where everything really came off the rails. I'm going through this quick because, like I said, I want to show you a bunch of charts and graphs. All right, now, a couple things to keep in mind. Now, while gold was money for 5,000 years and all the way up until 1971, the price of gold was very stable. Now, would you say the price of houses is stable? In Puerto Rico, just since I've been there since January, the prices have doubled 100% in 6 months. In California, where I'm from, the area that I'm from, prices have doubled in about 2 years. That's about 50% a year. Would you call that stable? The price of gas has almost doubled in 6 months. Would you call that stable, etc.? So you get my point. So for 300 years, though, the price of gold was stable. What happened is, as you can see in this chart right here, so this is 1700, 1800, 1900, 1900 here. Right here, you can see this little spike, and that's right here. FDR nationalized gold. So you heard gold was made illegal. 1933, Act 6102, they made owning gold illegal, and they took all the gold. They were able to do that because it was in the banks. It's already in the banks. They just seized it. They shut the banks down. When they opened it back up, you can't get your gold out anymore. But what they did is gold had been $20 an ounce this whole time, and then when they took everybody's gold, they revalued it to $35, and so that's why you see this spike, and then it remained stable. A little bit went up here around World War II, which might be a little bit expected, but you can see for hundreds of years it stayed here, and then because the government, FDR, revalued it, it stayed stable at $35. You can see that. But then right here, 1971. What the heck happened? Why did this happen when it had stayed stable for 300 years and then shot up to here? So let's take a look at that. Here's where we're going to get into the good stuff. So first, real quick, what happened? President Richard Nixon, this guy right here, Tricky Dick, he basically said, look, we're done with the gold standard. And I'm not going to walk you through this because I've covered it so much in other videos, but real quickly, the dollar was pegged to the gold. Everyone was pegged to the dollar. The United States government couldn't help but print more money. Every government in all of history has always debased their currency. They've always devalued it by printing more, inflating it. And so they started printing more. And other countries are like, hey, we see what you're doing over there. We don't want these fake pieces of paper. We'll take the gold. And so all the countries started coming for their gold. And eventually the United States was protecting that peg, pretending like that it wasn't a problem. And they gave up so much gold that President Nixon said, hey, we're done, close the gold window. It's not convertible anymore. And at that point, it became backed by nothing. So dollar used to be backed by gold. Some people may not know that. And then it became backed by nothing, whatever, the faith of the government, whatever that means. And it's fiat. Now, fiat doesn't mean that it's backed by nothing. Fiat means by decree, because value is always found in the open market, right? It's whatever you and I are willing to trade or exchange for that. But so gold is, whatever, a price of stock, Bitcoin, whatever, is when we found the price in the market. But fiat is just because they say so. And so this created what's known as the Nixon shock. Now, to illustrate kind of what I'm talking about leading up to this, you can see how they just started printing more money, more money, more money, more money, more money, more money. Of course, once they can print money, why wouldn't they just want to keep doing that? So we can see this is the Nixon shock. So this is when he removed the gold window. I'm going to explain this, and then we're going to dive into these charts I'm telling you about. All right. Now, the Nixon shock effectively led to the end of the Bretton Woods Agreement when the whole world was pegged to gold. So not only did because the dollar severed from the gold system and all the other currencies of the world were pegged to the dollar, all the currencies became free floating at the same time. All right. that led the agreement and the convertibility of the US dollar, so the US dollar was no longer convertible into gold. The Nixon shock was the catalyst for the stagflation of the 70s as the US dollar was devalued. So that led to 1970 stagflation, which is high inflation and low growth. It's not a good period that we want to be in. As they ramped up that devaluation, now we can see in this chart right here, I'm going to start getting into a couple charts. I have a lot more, but we can see right here, this is the inflation in the United States. So prices going up. Now there's lots of ways we can look at inflation, but for what we're talking about right now, this is the prices of everything from your meat and your milk and your houses and your car and everything going up. And again, we can see that this is 1800. This is 1900. So here's 100 years. The average annual inflation was 0.2%. So that means you didn't have to go out and buy a house today because it was going to be worth more in the future. You didn't have to speculate on Tesla stock because it was going to be worth more in the future. Prices stayed pretty much the same for over 100 years. When the Fed was created right here and they started printing more money, what do you think happened? It started going up. This blue line right here, though, is when Richard Nixon severed the tide. So even though they were on a gold standard, but they were still printing more money, we saw the inflation ticking up. But here, all bets are off. Look at how fast that happened. Now let's take a look at what's happened since then. All right, now the first thing you have to understand is that currency, the US dollar, is debt. So the way it gets into the system is debt. It's all debt-based. So basically the Fed creates it from thin air. They give reserves to the bank, and then the banks loan that money into existence. When you go to the bank to get an auto loan, a car loan, a house loan, etc., that money is created into existence. And then also to understand that every single dollar that's created makes the existing dollars worth less and less and less, which is why, back to the attributes of money, why we covered that at the beginning, it has to be scarce. Because if you just create more, it makes all the existing ones less and less and less. And each dollar that is printed, each dollar of debt becomes less productive. Of course, if you have debt, right, you rack up your credit card debt, your house debt, all of a sudden a large percentage of your income is going to pay the debt. And now you don't have money to save or to invest or to start a business with or whatever. So that dollar is less and less productive because now it's going to pay that debt that's dragging you down. And we've seen this base money, the fiat money, has just exploded since 1971. So it stayed relatively flat. And look how fast it got here. Now, because it's debt, here's a better chart to show you the explosion of debt right here. So this is the US national debt right here in this chart. And again, you can see from 1900 here to 1970, I mean, it went up a little bit, as you can see in this arrow. But from 1970, what the heck? Maybe you could have expected it to go in a line similar like to this, maybe, right? Maybe it would grow like that. But look at that. Of course, once you can create free money, why wouldn't you create as much as you possibly can? Well, the next charts I'm going to show you here in a minute are going to show you why. But I just one more chart here we can see. This is the amount of debt outstanding and gross domestic product. So the GDP, the gross domestic product, is growing like this. Now, why is that important? So wealth is not money. Money helps you acquire wealth. It measures wealth. Wealth is goods and services. If you and I were on a deserted island, I had $1 billion in a suitcase, and there was nothing to spend the money on the island, no boat to get off, no phone to call anybody, no food or water, how much would that $1 billion be worth? You need goods and services. And so we need the goods and services to go up, but instead we have the debt going up and the goods and services are staying down. All right, so now that we've set the stage, let's look at the devastating effects across every area of your life that's been affected by this. All right, so the first thing is it's turned our economy into an economy that produces goods and services, which again is wealth. And the wealth of a nation would be, one, you have an education system that educates people properly to go create goods and services. And then you create an overabundance of goods and services that you can export those goods and services and bring wealth into your nation by exporting. Well, what we've done is we have, because like I said, wealth is goods and services, what we've done is instead of goods and services, we have financialized our economy. So what does that mean? So that means instead of producing goods and services, all we produce today is financial services. Where the city skyscrapers in the big cities used to be full of industrial companies, and now they're all financial companies. financial companies. So they financialize the economy, and basically the money trickles down from the Fed to retail. So as I said, it starts at the central bank and they give it to the commercial banks. The commercial banks then give it to the hedge funds, the institutions, and each part along the way, they're buying up financial assets, pushing the prices up higher. Finally, the money trickles to retail, which is you and I, and we pay a huge interest rate and asset prices already bought up. So the whole economy is already financialized. And what it does is it drives up the speculation of asset prices. Like I said, well, I better buy a house now because it's going to be too expensive in the future. I better buy that Tesla stock because it's going to be more in the future. But more importantly, I'm also forced to buy those investments because the dollars are losing value. I should be able to just specialize and be the best brain surgeon or whatever in the world, the best coder, the best engineer in the world, and work really hard, and then put my money over here and have it store my wealth, and I could use it at a later time. The problem is if we store our wealth in currency, it's losing value. It's losing value so fast, so I'm forced to speculate on assets, which pushes assets artificially high. The other thing is that I should be able to be the best engineer or coder or brain surgeon or cancer researcher in the world. And I should focus on that to make an impact on the world, producing goods and services. Instead, I can only be half of that because half of me has to be an investor. Why? Because the money is losing value. I'm gonna keep going. All right, now what's happened is we've gone into an economy, a financialized economy that now favors specialization over making things. So businesses now, you hear about this, they're buying back their own stock. They're taking on debt to buying back their own stock instead of paying their workers more, instead of investing into new equipment, instead of buying new facilities, instead of investing into research and development so they can come out with new products, instead of investing into things that would produce more goods and services and lead to higher living wages and higher quality of life. Instead of that, we speculate. Let's just buy back our own stock. Let's go buy other people's stock. Let's speculate on financial assets, which then leads to worker pay stagnation. So let's take a look at a couple charts here. So here we can see industrial production. Here's 1960, this arrow right here, 1971, of course. And so we can see that industrial production had been kind of going up like this, and it's kind of petered off. It's kind of stayed pretty flat. But what we have right here, volume of futures trading, the futures market, gambling, speculation, had gone up, kind of steady. Here we are in 1970. You might expect it to kind of go up like this, but nope, it went like that. So instead of investing into the industrial production, it went into speculation. Let's look at a couple other charts to really kind of highlight this. So this is growth in productivity and hourly compensation since 1948. So we can see from 1948 that productivity and compensation were going up at about the same rate. But right here, where this arrow shows, something happened. 1971, we got off the gold standard, and look what happened. Productivity went up, but yet compensation pretty much stayed flat. So since 1971, the amount of money you're making has pretty much stayed flat, while the price of everything has gone up. So let's take a look at a couple of those. So we can see real GDP, real wages and trade policies right here. So this chart is pretty alarming when you look at this. So again, 1950, you can see all these were moving together. This is the GDP, right? This is the gross domestic product, this is the goods and services. The GDP, the real wages, the average real wage, and the real median wage. The real median wage is offset for inflation. So we can see right here, this arrow pointing right here to 1971, and you can see how these broke apart, and you can see that the real median wage has basically stayed flat while everything's gone up. Now everybody knows it's hard to live today, it's hard to get ahead, it's hard to survive, it's hard to have the quality of life that you want, but not everybody can figure out exactly why. They can't put their finger on it, but this pretty clearly tells us where the finger should go. Now we can see that the difference of the rich and poor really come down to the assets that they buy. So here's on a $10,000 per year annual salary, and this is $1 billion. And so this shows you the makeup of the assets that they have. And so you can see for the people here at the bottom, most of their wealth is either in their primary residence, is this red, or in their vehicles in their orange. The blue over here, which would be investments or business interests, they hardly have any, right? But as you get further down, you can see that the house and the vehicles make up way less, right? You can see this line. So house and vehicles make up way less, and instead they have stocks, fixed income, assets, real estate, and business. And those go up. You can see how that makeup is, and it's because of 1971. Here's one more, and then we're going to jump to a couple more. Here's the income share of the top 1% relative to the bottom 90%. And so we can see back here in the 20s, of course, this was the Great Depression. Things got a little bit haywire. Here's 1971, of course, where the arrow is. And look at this wealth and income inequality gap that has just skyrocketed since that time. Now, like I said earlier, it's just getting harder and harder to live, but not everybody can figure out why. Well, part of the reason is because wages, the amount of money you make, your income, has continued to fall, while simultaneously at the same time, prices are going up. So that doesn't lead to a good scenario where it makes it easier for you to live. And so we can see that electricity, food, and fruit have skyrocketed. Here's all three. We can see in this chart right here. And again, electricity, food, two things that you must have to live, you can see again, has all stayed pretty stable right here. Until, what does this arrow show? 1971. And look at the way this has absolutely exploded. Again, you might expect it to kind of trend like this, but you would not expect it to shoot up like that. Now we can see prices all over the board. Again, here's homes. Here's homes, so we can see here, for about 100 years, the price of homes had gone pretty steady. 1971 right here, and look at the price of homes ever since. Now, if you're starting to understand what's going on, it's not that home prices or fruit or electricity are getting more expensive. What it is that the value of the dollars is dropping, and so it takes more dollars to buy the same things today. Your home is not making you rich. Dollars are losing value. Now, if you're holding the home instead of holding dollars in the bank, you're keeping up with inflation. You're at least doing pretty good. Let's look at a couple other ones, because these are ones that really affect you. Let's look at healthcare, because dang, is healthcare expensive. I think for my family of four, it's like $26,000 a year after taxes for my insurance. It's insane. And so again, insurance had stayed pretty flat. 1971 right here, and look at this explosion right here. Now, has the quality of life really improved? Are people living longer? Seems like more people are sick today than ever before, and yet look at that 1971. Let's look at a couple other ones. This is the amount of money we spend per pupil, per student. And again, back here, 1971, right here. This is the spending, and down here is the reading scores, the math scores, and the science scores. So this shows how well the schools are doing. And you can see that since 1971, as a matter of fact, science went down. We're actually worse at science, and reading and math were about the same. So we've plateaued, but yet for some reason, we're spending so much more. Why are we spending so much more, but we're not getting any better results? And again, it's because it's not getting more expensive. It's because those dollars provide less and less and less value each one. Here's the average cost of college over the years. So here's 77 to 78. And now here's 2018. It's way higher now, but from 8,000, we have almost $50,000. I think you're starting to get the point. And this is one more that kind of illustrates the opposite side of it. And this is the net savings. So this is the net savings of people. A lot of people have problems saving because their wages are going down and prices are going up. And you can see 1971 savings had stayed relatively flat. And since 1971, they've been on a steady downward decline. What the heck happened in 1971? Now, not everybody understands why sound money is important. What is the relevance of having a gold standard? Why does it matter if we're off the gold standard? Can't they just make everybody rich by printing money and sending out stimulus? They can certainly print money and send out stimulus, but there are repercussions to those, and that's what we're looking at. Now, we've looked at the costs of your food and your electricity and your savings and your college debt and student spending. We looked at all those things. But what about other factors like societal effects? You might have noticed that right now, tensions have never been higher. People are at each other's throats. There's civil, discourse happening all over the place, if you call it that. And it's affecting things more than just what you spend on your money. Of course, when you don't have money, lots of things start falling apart, but let's take a look at that. So societal effects. Well, we can see that the age of high debt and low pay. So we're getting more and more debt, but at the same time, the pay is going down and down and down. Now, because of that, when that happens, money becomes very important. When you have all your basic needs met, money is not as important. But when you're having a tough time getting by, money becomes very important. We can see that illustrated here. So here's 1970, again, before 1971. This green line right here, this big green line is being very well off financially. So this is where people have rated these objectives to being essential or very important. So this is what people think are very important. So in 1970, being very well off financially was very low. As a matter of fact, it was one of the lowest things on here. We have developing a meaningful philosophy of life. Oh, that's pretty important. Helping others who are in difficulty. Well, that's pretty important. Becoming an authority in my field. Some people want to do that, PhDs, etc. Or raising a family. So those are all things that should matter in a society, not really being well off financially. As you can see in 1970, nobody really cared about that. But we could see that developing relationships and helping others that are having difficulty, being authority in my field, raising a family were all high. Today, we can see all those have come down. As a matter of fact, the lowest is developing a meaningful life, which should be at the top of everyone's list. But what was down here, nobody even thought about it, being very well off financially has now become the most important thing, because when you can't survive, money becomes very important. Let's look at a couple other ones here. That's the same chart. This one here, this is the share of young adults living with their parents. All right, so when you can live on your own, when you can be independent, you feel good about yourself. You can direct your own life as you see fit. But when you're still living at home with your parents, it makes it pretty difficult to have that responsibility that you need. It obviously makes it very difficult to raise a family. You're still living with your parents. You're probably not feeling super good about yourself. And we can see here, since 1900, it was a little bit high. That was part of the culture back then. And then, of course, World War II happened. But then it really plummeted. People were owning homes. Things were doing good. But since 1971, of course, where the red arrow is, look at the rate of people living at home with their parents. Of course, societal, that is not such a good thing. We can also see delays in families. One side of the aisle wants to attack the family. They want to destroy the nuclear family. I personally believe, I don't typically give you my own opinions or my beliefs, but I believe that the family is the core. It's your support system. Without a family, without the support, you don't have what you need to survive in this world, which is why they want to take it away from you. They want you to depend on the state. And we can see that the median age at first marriage from 1890 to present. So we can see that the median age of marriage had pretty much stayed flat for hundreds of years. Men, it was a little bit different. 1971, what happened right here? And it has absolutely exploded. So they're delaying how long it takes to start a family. Of course, if you delay starting a family too long, then it affects how many kids you can have, things like that. But even more, could you believe that going off the gold standard could be responsible for the divorce rate? So we can see the divorce rate in 1950, barely going up. Maybe we might expect a trajectory like this, but instead, 1971, it absolutely skyrockets. Now, why would going off the gold standard affect the divorce rate? Well, because wages went down, costs went up. It makes it way more difficult to live today. And what's probably the number one problem with divorce? I would guess arguing over money. So when you don't have enough money to live, both people have to go work. You're growing apart in relationships. You get mad over splitting up responsibilities. You fight over money. You don't have enough money to pay the bills, and it leads to a higher divorce rate. So you can see, not only does it affect us everywhere, it also affects us as a society. So that's great, right? You understand it. But what are we going to do about it? Well, we say that in order to fix the world, we have to fix the money. Fix the money, fix the world. That's what we say. And so I say that fiat money is to blame. I've shown you the charts, 1,000 words per, right? Money, as we said in the very beginning, money has to be scarce. You just can't create trillions of dollars. So all those people, hopefully you're not one of them, that wish they could just print a couple more $1 trillion and send out more stimulus, you can see what the effect it's having on everybody around you. And when society breaks down around you, it's not good for you either. All right. Now, money has to be hard. It has to be sound. What does that mean? When I say hard money, sound money, I'm talking about money that cannot be inflated away. Gold has been great hard money, sound money, because you can't just go create a bunch more gold. Now, if the price of gold went up, a lot more people would go mine gold and we'd get a little bit more out of the ground, but typically it inflates at just a couple percent a year. And it's pretty predictable because it's hard to get out of the ground. When I can push a button on a keyboard and create 35% of the dollars in existence were created in the last year, you can see it's a problem. So it has to be hard and sound. The other thing is that man is the problem. Humans is the problem. Humans will always debase and always inflate. Now, typically I go back all the way through history and we can see through thousands of years of history, every form of money has been debased. It's been inflated away, and that's because man is always going to try to get something for nothing, and so that is a problem. Sound money is resistant to inflation because we can't create more of it. Now, I go to this quote, I use this quote all the time. This is one of my favorite Austrian economists, F.A. Hayek. I recommend you read his books, The Road to Serfdom. It's a must read for everybody. Constitutional Liberty is another good one. Read The Road to Serfdom. Write it down. Read that book. He says, we can never have a good money again. Never have a good money again before we take the thing out of the hand of the government. That is, we can't take it violently out of their hands. They have guns, right? All we can do is by some sly roundabout way introduce something that they can't stop. He said this, I think, in 1980. We'll never have sound money again until we take it out of the hands of the government because it's man, it's humans that always distort that. But you can't do it by force. They got the guns. I have to introduce something in a sly roundabout way until they can't stop it. Very prophetic to say that in 1980. What do you think he's talking about? Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think he's talking about in that. But sound money, that is the thing. Fiat money, money that can be created at will, is the problem. And until we take that thing out of the hands of the government, we will never have a good society again. Again, leave me in the comment. Tell me what F.A. Hayek's talking about. And then, of course, give me a thumbs up on this video if you like it, because you know I'm working hard to bring this stuff to you, and I'm trying to change the way you think about money so we can change the world. Fix the money, fix the world. Give me a thumbs up on this. Of course, if you don't like the video, whatever, give me a thumbs down. But tell me why. Leave me a comment and let me know why. That's what I got for you today, all right? To your success. I'm out.